session réflexion dédiée à l'entrepreneuriat.
So this is a session on entrepreneurship, very important session.
Les pays du monde arabe sont dotés d'une fille
Arab world countries
dynamique.
have an extremely dynamic population. I mean, the birth rate is quite high, but the unemployment rate is very high as well. So the rest of the world is aging, which is a handicap. Suppose you have a large number of young people in a country that is unemployed. It is an issue. Lack of funding is an obstacle to the creation of companies, therefore to the creation of jobs. So how can we overcome those obstacles? Creating jobs, creating opportunities implies a more entrepreneurial mindset in the younger population. And this is really an issue. How can we assist in the establishment of companies? How can we promote economic life? And I'm very pleased to welcome eminent representatives of this new generation. Madame Hala Fadel will speak first.
Monsieur Ricardo Caram.
Mr. Ricardo Caram will come next.
Monsieur Patrick Chaloub.
Patrick Chaloub.
Madame Nevin El Tari.
Nevin El Tari. Tanal Al-Zain.
Et Monsieur Mohed Al-Trad qui va nous rejoindre, je pense, un petit peu plus tard.
Who will be with us later.
Donc, Madame Al-Fadel, bonjour.
Madame Al-Fadel, thank you, and good afternoon. You are a graduate of a French leading business school, HEC, and you're extremely very involved in the Arab world, where you have set up an association about 10 years ago that was in Lebanon, and every year you organized a startup competition. You are a business angel as well. You have set up a venture capital fund, co-working in Beirut. Well, I can't mention all your activities. I'll let you explain what it's all about. Thank you, Annick. Good afternoon to all. As Annick said, I created the MIT Enterprise Forum of Arab countries, which I manage. It covers 21 countries, Arab countries, and it's on a voluntary basis. A voluntary worker, and I have a staff of 10 people working on site, another 300 volunteers who assist entrepreneurs in our countries. Nevin is one of us, and she's been supporting us for quite some time. My background was in investment fund in Paris, based in Paris, and then I decided to support entrepreneurs in Arab countries with the venture capital fund. So my whole life, in fact, is dedicated to that part of the world and to entrepreneurs. In other words, the renewal of the Arab world is something I do believe in. Why is it that I believe in it? Well, a number of things. First of all, I was educated in Paris, so I have a French perspective. Part of my education was in USA, and that's when I discovered the Arab world. And I could see that there was a lot of energy, a lot of talents, know-how there. young people who wanted to control their own life, and very few projects to help them succeed. As you rightly said, it's a young population. Of course, there's a lot of energy in the population. 70% of the population is under 25 years of age. It's a double-edged sword because 10 million young people look for a job, and the only answer we can give them is, sorry, no job for you. It's not a good thing. Well, entrepreneurship is a solution because in a nutshell it tells them, okay, it's for you to create your own job. So the responsibility is on them. Believe in yourself. Don't wait for to land a job. Thanks to the help of other people. I was fortunate when I was in the MIT in the USA. I was involved in the MIT 50K competition that awards a prize to the best idea, and I was awarded this prize, and I could set up a company. When I visited Arab countries, I could see that not much was being done in favor of entrepreneurs, and it occurred to me that I wanted to help these young people. They have projects, they are ambitious, they have full of energy. I decided to help them set up a company, something that can be taught. There are courses, there are methods, there are professional people to assist you. Now, a young person who wants to set up his own company is 4 times more likely to succeed if he gets the right type of support. I know there's a video. Could I possibly show it to you to get you a feeling of what this competition is all about?
You might win the competition, you might win an angel, you might win a press relationship, you might win a client, you might win a contact, you might win a friend. You're here to win something, so don't go home without winning it, and go home and make it happen.
Fantastic week here in Doha. I come from Silicon Valley, and I'm feeling very comfortable here in terms of the innovation and the entrepreneurs, and I'm very excited about the things to come.
They're all Arabs, they're all young, they're all passionate, they're all brilliant.
It's an interesting competition because we're meeting a lot of people, investors who are giving us feedback.
It's such a lucrative opportunity to be part of such a great event.
It feels like I'm in Cambridge, Massachusetts, working with entrepreneurs from the top universities there. The people here are really amazing. They've got some incredible ideas.
Voilà.
Here we are.
Donc, ça fait
Right.
8 ans maintenant que
So
cette
for the past
compétition a lieu tous les
10
ans.
years,
On
this
reçoit
competition has
à peu
been
près
taking
5000
place
projets
every year. We get about
par an,
5,000
de
projects
20
per year
pays différents.
from 20
5000 projets,
countries,
comme
5,000
en moyenne, 5
projects,
personnes derrière chaque
5
projet, c'est
people
25 000
in a project.
personnes qui ont
That's
envie de créer
25,000 people
entreprise
who feel like
dans
setting
l'ensemble des
a
pays arabes.
company throughout the
Alors, pour
Arab
casser
world.
un peu quelques clichés,
So let's get rid of misconceptions. 43% of projects are led by women. The same competition in the US is 27% women only. So I think that we're talking about a region with a lot of stigma attached to too much overgeneralization, and this is very detrimental to that region, and the entrepreneurs want to create something positive, a new impetus in the region. So we'd like to try and generate the same energy. Of course, there are people who have misconceptions in the outer world, but let's try and support those who have the right type of approach. So 25% of women and 65% of groups teams have at least one woman in the key persons in the group. 43% of the teams are led by women, and 65% of them include at least one woman in a key position. So 5,000 projects, many come from Palestine, from Syria, from Egypt. Our first contingent of participants from Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and women are present in all these countries. When Gaza was at war in July, we see a doubling of the number of participants because the people want to solve their problems. Those who have a positive energy are even more energetic. They try very hard, even harder, to push their projects. So you're going to hear more about this project. And I would say it's their way to protest. I don't want to push it too far, but all of them are Charlies, and they're protesting. They want to have the right to create a job, to be part of the economic activity. And some of them are very successful. Among the participants are participants who won this competition, who are doing very well. I'd like to refer to Kestam al-Khatib in Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, the first YouTube consumer, twice as many people, consumers as in the US. And guess what? That has created the first YouTube channel in Saudi Arabia, 286 million views per year, 1.5 billion videos viewed in Saudi Arabia. And in Saudi Arabia, people don't watch the TV as there's a censorship there. They'd rather watch programs on U-Turn, which is his YouTube channel. And one particular program on U-Turn is called Entaille, meaning
prix au vol.
C'est un programme humoristique
à la télé.
It's humor program, humoristic program on TV.
De la chanson de Bob Marley.
And there was a parody of Bob Marley's song, No Woman No Drive. So it's a good sign that they want more freedom of expression. 1.5 billion views for No Woman No Drive or similar programs. It tells a lot about their ambition and their strength. Al-Hatid in Saudi Arabia, but I could refer to other examples. A similar example in Lebanon. He makes intelligent glasses, spectacles. When you swim, for instance, you can get all the information that any runner or racer can get on his watch. How fast you run, how long you run, etc. Similar examples in Egypt, an example in connectivity and things connectivity. You can connect all your household devices to your smartphone. In Sudan, as a service is the name of a software where can you open up clinics and remedy the problem of a scarcity of doctors. Local Spotify named Arami. Anyway, I could give you so many similar examples. Macapie, which is the equivalent of a private, c'est le vente privé in Arab words. So these young people are very ambitious. They do create jobs, and they've changed the mindset there, quite the opposite of what you've heard about that region this morning. So I think it's worthwhile trying to put as much energy in that as what they use in terrorism. In other words, we should support these new talents in our world, and it would make a great impact. A better media coverage could be very supportive of these new entrepreneurs to find new clients or foreign investors. Hamed Al-Saleh, for instance, he opened up in Silicon Valley. He does household items connectivity. He had to fight extremely hard, 1 year more than the non-Arab entrepreneurs. So because they would ask him such questions as, what is your name, Al-Saleh? Why do you come from Egypt? In other words, a lot of stigma attached to that identity and that region. And it's a very negative look. So I hope that our media in this room, could you help us convey a more positive image and send out a positive image of those young people? They work hard. 54% of them are under 25 years old. They're used to Twitter, Facebook, and other social media, and most of them, well, half of them, as I said, are women. So, of course, they're very much in favor of peace. As to the other half, they are very ambitious, and they want to create a Google in their region or a company that is bound to change the world. Do we have any time left? No.
Pour enrichir votre propos et le compléter, je vais passer la parole à Ricardo Caram.
Ricardo Caram is next. He too tries to disseminate a positive image of the young people, entrepreneurs in that region. You know him, for most of you, as you are famous in Lebanon, as a TV and radio compere in Lebanon. You set up the Takin Foundation some years ago that celebrates and acknowledges achievements by Arab world leaders or business people. So why don't you tell us what Takim is all about? Does it hold the key for success, the key to success for the young people of Lebanon? Good afternoon all. Yeah, I work for TV, and this background gave me the opportunity to meet exceptional individuals. I've been fascinated by the word entrepreneur. I've always been fascinated. To me, entreprendre means dreaming, going ahead and contributing to change. Since I started in TV, I've always tried to identify success stories, people who stood out and contributed to change wherever they are. The Arab public in general, the general public, and the Lebanese general public discovered, for instance, Carlos Ghosn, 1999, remember at the time. It was known the Nissan-Renault alliance yet. That was before the alliance, and Carlos was about to leave Paris and settle down in Tokyo. I talked to him, and people have been to discover him on that broadcast. Same thing for Nahal Zadni, who was unknown at the time. The Swatch guy was unknown then, and the general public discovered these people with me. And these individuals succeeded because the horizon of Western world opened to them. Had they remained at home or in the Arab world, they might not have succeeded that way. So I thought, okay, you know, a TV broadcast, something that comes and goes, why don't we use a platform? We all agree on the fact that in the Arab world, we don't have any role model. in Egypt, Jordan, Syria, in Sudan, or Lebanon, in the Gulf countries, you ask young people, who is your role model? Well, we don't get any answer. It's either a spiritual, religious, or political leader, but it's not going to be an entrepreneur. So that's why I decided I would set up a platform to collect the stories of ordinary people, unsung heroes, people who stand out and might be a source of inspiration for young people in Arab countries. And that's how we set up TACRIM, which is a foundation that tries to identify 8 individuals or 8 organizations in 8 different fields, and it contributed to a change. In fact, it reached out to many people and impacted many. So that's how it all started 5 years ago. Over the years, we've been able to honor, to pay tribute and reward exceptional persons from different Arab countries where they're set up in the world. TACRIM claims to be a new renaissance in the Arab world. It claims to be a source of inspiration for these young people. And essentially, it's a foundation that is involved, contributes to changing the identity of the Arab world. But the image, our image, of the Arab world in the international press is a very negative one. By highlighting these people, I hope that we contribute and transform this negative image into a positive one. How do you go about selecting your prize winners? What do you mean? You say that they are recognized and acknowledged by your foundation. Well, the selection is done via a pretty strict and complex mechanism of 3 different stages with the committees, scrutinizing committee, of committees of experts, let's say technicians, university professors from the whole world, and then there's a jury made up of great names. The results are given in May, and then there's a ceremony a few months later, a prize awarding ceremony, and then we give them support for 1 full year following the prize. We have them, we worked with the laureates. They attend the economic forum in the world. We guarantee they'll be given a media coverage. They can attend university, and there's going to be first forum next month when we'll invite the 5 laureates, more recent of candidates, laureates, 5 graduates coming from Arab countries. So they'll be meeting, they'll be discussing graduates and young people, so that some osmosis is generated. It's going to be a 2-way process, exchanges between these 2 types of young people. What about the impact of your laureates on their home country, their own community? Why is it, or how is it that they can stimulate or create momentum? Well, there's an exchange of views, a sharing of experience between laureates. There's media coverage as well, which is a factor. And our community that was established over time, because those who attend the TACRIM events are carefully selected. These individuals are interested in the subject matter. An Iraqi woman, for instance, who won the prize for scientific research, was distinguished. She could meet with Bill Gates and was sponsored by the foundation. Her work requires a huge amount of money or support. Or again, another model created by an Egyptian woman. She tries to give some hope and a dream to young people in her country who are not even able to dream anymore. So she tries to identify them, and using a painting and brushes, she gives back some hope to them. And this is a new model that has reached the Sudan and reached Yemen after the Takrim event, and thanks to this buzz by the media. So these are the models that we use. A transdisciplinary approach. So this community is growing all the times.
Thank you.
Okay, we mentioned the importance of role models. We also referred to the role of support. Patrick Chaloub is next on my list of speakers. He is the manager of a group set up in the 50s in the luxury goods industry. It's becoming multinational, more than 9,000 employees in 14 countries. Mr. Chaloub is one of the main eminent members of Endeavor in the Middle East. It's a mentoring group in that region. And he provides role models. He gives access to knowledge to young people worthy of this cause. As you rightly said, I'm heading a large group that shares strong values in terms of respect, understanding, confidence building and trust, also excellence and quality. And also a core value, entrepreneurship, taking the lead, initiatives. As you said, we are growing, but these strong values, these core values, we are keen to spread them around us. We are a deeply committed group, committed to our social responsibility. I would invite many groups in the Middle East, especially those most successful, to give back to community what they received from community. As to our commitment as a group and our responsibility, it's essentially on education. Education for a cause. We think that education can help us grow the resources of the community and to help that community to grow, to participate in economic development that would have a trigger the cascade by creating jobs. So deeply committed in education and to entrepreneurships, which is really the core value of our group. You mentioned to me the collaboration with a foundation in Abu Dhabi. You welcome young people for internships in your group. Yeah, we try to identify the main challenges for young entrepreneurs. I described a number of structures which have been set up to encourage and promote entrepreneurship. There are a number of state structures, and the Alifa Fund in Abu Dhabi. There are similar funds in Qatar, in Dubai, in Kuwait, that support small companies. And these funds are wealthy enough to really assist young companies. Now, and we see that young people are really determined to to become entrepreneurs. So what are the main challenges for young entrepreneurs once they have decided to set up their company? We've identified a number of them and would like to make an impact on these challenges. Challenge number one all too often, entrepreneurs are very eager to succeed. They have a shorter-term vision, where you need to have a longer-term vision. Second challenge, expertise. Okay, they come up with a bright idea. You have to go further, to go deeper, and try to see whether that bright idea is really sustainable. Now, recognition is missing all too often. They are not recognized in their local country. They create a local brand. It's not going to succeed with the local clients, local consumers. And the last challenge is to go one step further, find financing structures beyond the initial startup phase. And we try to contribute value, mentoring, to help them move from short-term to longer-term visions, support of assistance in training, education. These entrepreneurs of Alifa Fund, we take them in for a training period for 6 months to teach them how to manage a company, be they grocers or shopkeepers. They need to be trained. So we take them on with us, not just university students, but young apprentices. So at each individual step, we try to set up support structures. I'd like to know more about this Endeavour initiative, which is not really famous, often well-known in Europe. So you've been involved in the creation of the United Emirates Endeavour unit. Yeah, it was Endeavour was set up in the US 15 years ago. It has a stronger presence in emerging countries, South America and Middle East. In 15 years, Endeavour has grown to incorporate 600 companies in the group, more than $6 billion US dollars turnover, and thousands of jobs have been created. The concept that we'd like to help and create 1 million jobs further. What have we done in the Middle East? We're not talking about startups there. They're already there. But once the company is there, 1 or 2 million euros turnover, how can you move on to the next step? The next stage, 2 million to 50 millions to 100 millions. How can you cross the line and grow? And that's where we make a real impact on jobs and economy. It's not just the bright idea of a startup. It's something which is rolled out much further. Endeavour in the Middle East, we have 5 units. We were created 5 or 6 years ago. We support about 80 companies that generate 500 million US dollars turnover and create 15,000 jobs. And we'd like to create 150,000. We set it up with a number of companies and leaders and sponsors. So there's a lot of mentoring. You need to be able to identify the companies which can grow. Once you've identified them, you want to support them in their organization. For that, we ask them to have access to university, access to information. There's a trial and error system. We are recognized, highly recognized, and therefore we get a lot of support. It's a lot of networking as well. Thank you for this testimonial.
Donc nous remontons la courbe d'expérience de la start-up et nous arrivons
So we are going up the channel of the startup company, and we're looking at the funding issue, which is a significant issue. So I'm going to hand over to Mrs. Nivien El Tari, who is a banker who is very much involved in creating a capital market in Egypt, who created many private equity funds, including in partnership with the ABN AMRO, which is now RBS. So Mrs. Eltari will tell us more today about Delta Shield for Investment, which was created in 2012, which focuses on startup companies just starting out. So I'm going to give you the floor so that you can tell us more about this project.
It was really lovely to have the opening session by the president himself at such good timing for us as Arab world to show that we have another face than the one that media usually portrays. I apologize for speaking in English, but I wish I could speak French. I do understand a little, but too little for me. When we talk about, we usually portray that for entrepreneurs, the biggest problem is financing, but it's actually much more than that. Having come originally from the banking background, so one understands the financing requirements and the credit requirements and all the ability to analyze and be able to note how growth in companies can happen. I went into the entrepreneurial world as of when the capital markets opened in Egypt. So I actually moved into becoming an entrepreneur with the establishment of the Egyptian Stock Exchange, which I then later sat on its board. And having created my own companies, it is easy to relate to what we're talking about today because you've lived the life of what entrepreneurs live. I've created many companies in the financial sector, sold many of them, so I've made a lot of money too. But in the process, you've learned a lot of what it is that is problematic for entrepreneurs. How do you go to the next step every time? And I think I chose an easy way. I say it's easy, but it's never easy, is by partnering. You partner with companies that are, I partnered with huge banks, so my partner ABN AMRO, when you look at their financials, was 5 times the size of Egypt's GDP. So you become really a tiny drop. I think it's what we're seeing today in the world, and I think what I've been with Hala for many years now, and also with Endeavor as mentor. I've been on almost everything that is related to entrepreneurs, and you see that there is this idea that it is always connected to young people only, and as you mentioned. It is not. The difficulty is that they lack the experience. So how do you make sure that you link the experience to the actual entrepreneurs when they're building something, and the fast speed that they want to go by? How do you curb it in order to really grow companies? And I think it's the growth of companies that actually creates jobs. It is not the startup of companies that create jobs. It is growth companies, and therefore the importance of backing startups, and at the same time the second step, which is really the one where we miss out on the financial part, because this is really when it becomes essential. When we look at the startup phase, it is more of venture capital. And it seems that the world thinks that startups usually have to be in the tech business. And the reason they specifically put tech is because as they call in the US, spray and pray. So they give a lot of money. And one of them is going to make a big comeback. And I don't think tech is one of the least in terms of employment. It's an enabler to actually employ a lot of people for other businesses. So I think the focus on moving venture capital into much more brick and mortar type of businesses is a very important thing in that startup phase. Now, the risks are extremely high. A large percentage of those startups actually fail and go bankrupt. But that's not a waste of time, and it's not a waste of money, because usually comeback entrepreneurs are much better. We bet on companies and people that have had the experience of starting something and actually failed. They become the much better seed for the next company that comes in. So the region lacks venture capital money. But then comes the important part, which is actually Delta Shield. I've created many companies. They all have Delta somewhere. Basically, the whole focus was in 2007 when Egypt had the first actually regional stock exchange for SMEs, NILEX, I had reached a certain size where I sold my companies, or part of my companies, at a very huge sum of money. And my daughter was graduating, and all her friends were coming in to ask, how do we do this, how do you do that? And all of a sudden I realized, I mean, this generation is so much better educated. I mean, I see Hala when I go, I mean, the vibes that they give, it's just so, you want to go out and do anything you can in order to help. And so I actually said, this is when I started focusing on SMEs. And being the entrepreneur, it was easy for one to actually identify a couple of things that but what is it that really makes a company or breaks it? Is corporate governance. It is how do you establish that shareholding structure? How do you actually put agreements between those friends that come together and want to do something? So I decided that I would have two parallel lines. One would be that the companies that are already family businesses, which is the huge part of our businesses in our region, and the second generation or the third generation don't actually want to work with their parents. So you have this horrendous value of money that is actually being wasted by the generation that has been educated in the US and Europe and everywhere and does not want to work for their parents, because the generation gap in knowledge is so huge. And so I basically started working. I'm of the generation of the big ones, and I work a lot with the young ones. So how do you bridge the gap in terms of corporate? And this is where one part of the company, which Delta Shield do until today. And then I created something that's absolutely different, which is 138 Pyramids. And the concept behind 138 Pyramids is Egypt is known for its pyramids. It has 138 pyramids. So we are saying that we built 138 pyramids, but our future is building pyramids by companies that are there. And I have the backing of a number of very huge investors put in very little money. You don't need a lot of money when you're doing startups. But the whole idea is how do you put the right support system? So having sat on the board of the investment authority, I sit on the board of the supervisory authority, regulatory for the whole capital markets and mortgage and everything. I have a lot of the background of the public sector and putting regulations, and at the same time, you know what these problems are. So right now, I think the support is meant not just in money, and I think we'll come to the money part later. The support is how do you create the companies to be bankable and investable? So you put the right structure in, you put the right mentoring, you put the right people on the board, you put the right, we actually have an audit firm inside, we have a legal firm inside. So the company is a one-stop shop in order for you to create a ticket that is actually of a very low ticket in terms of cost. But we also put money, so we are partners in those companies. We have the connectivity worldwide, so you're able to bring mentoring from outside and inside. And we're not in a hurry to exit, because so this is a hybrid of VC, private equity, instead of it being rounds. So again, it is part of growing, the ecosystem is being built and requires a lot of knowledge from everywhere. And the financing part is actually, what I see is the least of the problems if you have the right company there.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
Alors, Monsieur Talal Al-Zain arrive à une étape du
Mr.
financement
Talal Al-Zain comes in at a later stage of financing once the company has proven it can grow. Mr. Talal Al-Zain is a long-term financer with more than 30 years investments in the Middle East. He is now regional CEO for the Middle East and North Africa of PineBridge Investments. He's going to present his activities and explain how he's involved in helping companies grow in this area.
Thank you, Anik. First of all, it gives me a pleasure to be among, of course, this is a very impressive group, so thank you for giving me the chance. For me, as you have mentioned, I spent all of my time, 30 plus years in banking. I started just like Naveen, I mean, on the commercial banking side. So I was trained to be risk averse. When I look at a project, I have to make sure that I raise all of the negatives of the project. So it's a completely different mindset from an investor. Now, on PineBridge, let me just give a very brief background. Of course, PineBridge Investments was the investment arm for AIG, American International Group. It was sold to a Chinese entrepreneur in first quarter of 2010, and he approached me in 2011 to say that PineBridge as a global asset manager with very strong long-only equities, fixed income, and alternative investments globally. But really, what was exciting about the whole story is that more than 50% of the assets under management were deployed in emerging markets. Of course, given that they are deployed in emerging markets, automatically there is a lot of investments and support to entrepreneurship. Because as we all know, in our markets, in emerging markets, there are a lot of new startups and new companies as these economies are developed. Of course, the whole purpose of setting up PineBridge Middle East is really to deploy capital in the Middle East. As Anik, you mentioned, our coverage out of Bahrain, it's the whole of the Middle East, actually the whole of Africa, and Turkey on the alternative investment side, so both on the private equity and on the real estate. Of course, as again, you were correct by saying that we are more looking at a more advanced stage companies because we are more on the private equity side of the business. Of course, given the limitation, I should not say that, because actually there are, and it's increasing the deal flow in our region. But still, because there are a lot of gaps in our markets for new companies and in new fields, you have to look at entrepreneurs, because you have to be able to support new startups. I mean, for example, of course, our focus, again, is more on the growth capital. Naveen mentioned capital to seed companies is probably not that big of a problem. To me, I see a gap between the seed level and the growth level. So really coming in as a growth capital, that's where there is a big need. There are institutions in our region. I mean, one of the sponsors here, Bahrain Development Bank, they are supportive of entrepreneurs. They do support, they are seeding a lot of companies. But what we need to, for me, when I look at our activities, we have to create, as a private sector, we have to create vehicles where we can provide that larger funding that is needed. So really bridging institutions such as Bahrain Development Bank and larger institutions. Of course, to me, raising capital, again, it's not a major issue. There's some issue there, especially for bridging growth capital investments. But really, with that also comes the talent, the skills. If I may just share one of my experiences, setting up the PineBridge Middle East, which is, of course, a joint venture between myself and PineBridge Investments Global, I had to make a choice where I want to set up. So when I looked around me in the areas where, or the countries where I want to set up, I thought I need to be in a place that has a strong talent on the investment side. I need to have a core of talent that will be a long-term with me, not a talent that can be there for a few years and leave. I don't have anything against that. I think every person that comes in and brings in value, that's a lot of value for the future. But that's why I decided, in this case, to set up in Bahrain. Because Bahrain historically, well, if we go back to the early 70s, Bahrain picked up from the unfortunate events in Lebanon at the time, the civil war, and a lot of banks moved into Bahrain. So naturally, there was a large portion or a large percentage of the population became more educated and more experienced in banking. So today, if I look at my operation in Bahrain that covers, again, the area that I mentioned earlier, more than 50% of my talent are young Bahrainis. They are extremely impressive. I mean, and they are both graduates, mostly are graduates from top schools, the MITs of this world. Now, even on the investing side, I'll just share an example. We went in and invested in a growth, as a growth equity in a company in Turkey. Excellent space. The field that's in this company was really exciting and interesting. The company is growing very strong. It's been around since 2006, so it's been there like for 6-7 years. When we came in, we started, as Naveen said, very important that we have to implement corporate governance. But then it was a challenge for us to convince the founder and the owner that was running the business as his own business. Whenever he wants to have cash for his laundry, he pulls the desk, pulls out some cash and pays for his laundry. Or if he wants to buy a car, he writes a check from the company to buy the car. So it was, for us, it was that initial communication, which is a very important element for a successful, as an investor to entrepreneur. So we had to cross that road first. But then second, skills. The guy is specialized in the area where the company is. He has no idea about financing. He has no idea how to manage people. He has no idea how to run the operations of the company. So we had to come in and spend a lot of time to convince him that he needs to hire, because to him, for example, a CFO, to him, he told me personally, he said, Talal, he said, I'm willing to listen to you and to hire a CFO, but it all depends on how much he's going to cost me or she's going to cost me, okay? The way I responded to him, I said, if we're going to hire the right CFO, he or she will be an investment, not a cost, because this person will help you to develop further. So really a big, for me, there is capital as a challenge, there is communication, and most importantly, skills. And the ability from day one, when you make an investment, either in a growth company or in a startup, is the ability between the funding partner and the founder or the creator of the company is to be able to really to communicate and to reach the goals that both wants to reach.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Alors, je vais maintenant passer la parole à Mohed Altrad.
I'm now going to hand over to Mohed Altrad.
Incontournable de la vie économique française.
Very major personality of French life, and his group has grown throughout the years to turn it into a multinational company. But he's not only a CEO, he is also a writer. He also has a rugby club, and he's going to tell us about what he's gone through and what he thinks of these two worlds that he knows very well. Thank you very much. I am very impressed, and I feel that I'm not going to be as good, and I am very proud to see talents coming from countries similar to the one I come from. These countries are currently suffering. For us in Syria, it's probably a low period, but things will pick up, but that's just how it goes, inshallah. First of all, I am not actually a Syrian. I'm a Bedouin. A Bedouin is someone who loves freedom, who likes moving around, who has the desert ahead of him. And the desert is a place where things take different meaning, where everything that is big looks big, and we really feel that we are small in the face of the desert. So this is how I grew up. My dad was a tribe chief. He raped my mom when she was 13, and this is how I was born, and then he abandoned her. I was raised by my grandmother, who didn't want me to go to school because for her school was for lazy people who didn't know how to do, and real life was a shepherd's life. I was lucky enough to have an uncle in my tribe who could not have a son or child, and so he took me instead, and this is how I was able to go to school. So the tribe moved around, so I only went to school from time to time until the age of 13 or 14. Then my uncle, who became my father, became steadier, and this is how I was able to go to school and have my baccalaureate. Syria is a country that is governed by an army, just like in Egypt today. And the Minister of Education was a general of the Syrian army, and he wanted to have good communication. And so he decided that the number one of each department in Syria would receive a grant to study abroad. There are about 12 districts in Syria, and I was number one in my district, my desert district. It was not very hard to be number one, and this is how I received a grant in the 1970s. It was a 500 franc grant, and I learned French when I arrived here in Montpellier, and this is how I had a PhD in information technologies. At the time, it was something really new in the economy. I worked for a year at Alcatel in a phone center. Then I worked for Thales Electronics on the military company. Then I went to Abu Dhabi, and I was involved in the creation of AVNOC. Abu Dhabi at the time was just the beginning of a country. And the country was looking for talents of Arab origin to find an economic system and an administrative system, and I was among them. So we created the Abu Dhabi National Company, and I had a 4-year contract, but I didn't want to stay there because my son had been born. He was going to go to school, and his mother wanted him to go to school in France, so I came back to France. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do. And with some school friends, we tried to create a computer, a laptop. So we bought a television screen, and then we tried to make a keypad. We bought a huge microprocessor to program it, and then our thing worked. And we put everything in a Delphi suitcase, and this worked. And the first application was to announce arrival and departure times in airports. It worked really well, but it was not very portable because it weighed 50 pounds. But this company grew, and maybe I should have met you at that time. We needed funding, but we didn't have it, and I only had my own savings from 4 years in Abu Dhabi. It was quite a lot, but not enough. So I sold this company to Matra. Matra is now part of the Lagardère Group, and it developed it in a very significant way. And I wasn't a little bit of money. I didn't know what to do. And I had a summer house in the south of France between Montpellier and Béziers. And then someone told me, well, don't you want to buy this scaffolding company? It was the first time I heard the word scaffolding. I didn't know what it was. So he told me that it was just tubes that were for the construction industry and that you welded and so on. And I took this company because I saw in this company a huge market, the building industry. And then I understood that it is useful in ports, airports, nuclear plants, and so on. And so I bought this company. It was bankrupt, so it was. I had a good deal, and I was able to rally it, and then I made money by reselling it. Then I bought others, and so on. And now I'm at the head of Ultra with $1 billion of sales and 115 subsidiaries in the world. So to come back to what was said initially, it was very hard to convince banks to lend us money. When you're Syrian, Arab, Bedouin, you've worked in information technologies, you've worked in the oil industry, and you're trying to buy a scaffolding company. So it was difficult. Sometimes I went 3-4 times, and when the bankers no longer had any objection, they just kept saying, well, I don't believe in this. Everything that I gave them was very straightforward, but trust started to build. But it was difficult for the growth of my group. And then trust came back because very soon I took the notion of exemplarity. I say what I do and I do what I say. And my banker started understanding this after a few years. And now the French government is a shareholder in my group through the BPI. I made them pay a lot because I needed a big capital increase to grow this company. There are four of the French major banks are involved as well. We have a double-digit growth. For 30 years, in 2015, it's going to be 30 years. Very soon, I understood, and this is when we were getting to the Arab world and subject, that there was a real cultural difference. First of all, Bedouins have a major difference to his fellow citizens because they're used to moving around, they have their skills. When you live in a city, you are lost as a Bedouin because this is not how you were brought up. When I arrived in France, it was still another cultural difference, an even bigger one, someone who just landed in Montpellier, who did not understand the language, did not understand the country, who was seeing the country for the first time in November with a low caste weather. People were not nice because I didn't understand what they meant. Let me tell you a little story. I didn't speak French. I had an address on a piece of paper, and I was showing this to people, and they were just giving me money. I didn't understand why. So that's just to tell you that gap, that cultural gap. And very soon, I understood, and that's a message for the new generations coming from our countries, you have to accept the cultural difference. France is not going to change for you. It's you who is going to change. Otherwise, it's impossible. So despite these differences, these difficulties, I started going towards this country, understanding its language, its culture, its cooking, its regions, and it's a very wealthy country that deserves being known. And this is how I became very French in the end, without ever forgetting who I am. I remain an Arab at core, and I think this is what French people like. It's our host country is a country that respects us. I was Entrepreneur of the Year in France, which is an achievement. And next June, in the name of France, I will be presenting myself to become Entrepreneur of the World. So I'll be representing France. It's meaningful.
J'ajouterai quelque chose, donc je sais que j'empiète sur le temps qui est alloué.
I know that
j'ai compris aussi que la cité
I don't have much more time left, but I understand that cities or that companies cannot live independently from cities. They have to be integrated. This is what you were saying, sir, because companies are people, and we spend a lot of time in our company, more than we spend in our family, and so there's a connection that happens. And I've included this notion in the company. The company is an extension of the city itself. It is the city itself. And the profit, the success, but also the failure has to go back to these people. Altrad, there are around 10,000 people. And a significant share of the profit goes to the employees. I'm not trying to be a socialist. I know that we have socialists in the government right now, but I'm trying to do this in my own way because I feel that it is fair and it's a balance that has to exist. Slavery is over. You cannot bring people to companies, make them work, and just receive their wages at the end of the day. You have to give them hope. I understood as well that in addition to this, you have to be interested in other things. This is why I write novels. My novels, the first is an autobiographical novel that was selected in 2012 for high schools in France. There was a universal message. The message was to say, you can really start from very low, from scratch, and really move up the social ladder. You need to be willing, you have to be determined. Sometimes it's very difficult. And this message has come through. And when this novel was chosen by the National Education Ministry, it had been sold at 1 million copies, and I chose the deal. This deal with the National Education Ministry to go to the schools and high schools to meet with pupils. And I only wanted to go to these schools and high schools where there were problems, where underprivileged people, immigrants. Let me take the example of a Narbonne school. There were 25 kids, sons of harkies, with fathers who are unemployed, who do not want to speak French, and for whom France is a racist, xenophobic country which doesn't do anything for them. And you have the teacher there someone who is scared, who is really facing a difficult time. And I told these kids what I thought of them, that this is not true, that France is a host country, France is a generous country, France is giving us a lot of things. In our own countries, let's take Syria. We're not in security. In France, you don't get killed. Of course, Charlie Hebdo happened recently. It's unacceptable, but it's a single occurrence. It's isolated. That's my analysis of it. So an action in favor of this country, which allowed me to do something that my own country did not allow me to do. You also talked about rugby. In rugby, there isn't money to be made. There's money to be lost. I created a rugby club that plays against the world elite, global elite. This is what we do. But we also have a training school for 16 to 18-year-olds. There are 1,000 children there, kids that are being funded for this, and very often they come from underprivileged families. I could talk for days and hours, but I think there's a time limit. Thank you.
Okay, so we've heard a number of stories, and to wind it up, it's a huge challenge for all of you, all these companies, a huge challenge. So what do you have in mind in terms of solutions? You know, this is the glass ceiling, as it were, which is supposed to be a bar to companies growing and prospering. What would you like to do to get rid of this glass ceiling? I think we alluded to it, or someone alluded to it. There are a number of challenges and a number of possible approaches. One of the approaches is mentoring to help young entrepreneurs organize their strategy, come up with a clear vision and support them on the way, help them move on. There's a huge wealth in these young entrepreneurs. So we should promote them. These young people coming from Middle East can make it locally, nationally and globally. Because in so many countries, I mean, if you stick to the local approach, we don't have the critical side. So you have to encourage global promotion, international promotions. And at some point, you need money. But to have money, you need to have a proper governance. You have to have skills, talents, so that you can collect money, and this is how Mr. Tharet Altrad has been able to make so much money so fast. I think there are a number of things which are already there in the field, but one is supposed to give time to time. It's not going to happen overnight. But something has started in the Arab world that needs human support. Mentoring young first-time entrepreneurs is difficult. Look at the Kaufman Foundation. It takes 4 mentors to 1 entrepreneur to succeed. So we need a lot of volunteers to come up and support those young people, and a lot more financing. So we should perhaps try to attract funds from the regional, for the region, but even European capital, perhaps US capital in the region. I was discussing this with the Nevin and Talon. There's been a drop in the amount of capital coming from abroad to that area. How can we attract foreign capital to these countries?
I think there are a number of ways that comes quickly to mind. One of them, of course, that we have a lot of Arab diaspora. And I think that Arab diaspora, to some extent, can be a positive and a negative. The negative part is they think they know best, and they have not lived on the ground to realize that the people on the ground have challenges that they absolutely understand much better. So bridging that, in my opinion, would be by allocating time to actually bring in, they don't have to be themselves the entrepreneurs that come onto the ground to help mentor, but actually create the time from people that work for them to spend within those companies that it is. So if you're in, we have a number of industries that are actually, we're seeing into the entrepreneurial world come. Most of it is renewable energy, recycling, a number of things, water, desalination. There are a number of areas where that diaspora does have their businesses very much like your good self, where we can bring in that talent. And so that's the real human part of it. So they can become, I sit on the board of Orange in Egypt, so I see what kind of foundation they've created in order for them to do. And like them, there are quite a few of the big businesses that have done that. So I think mostly corporate social responsibility type of thing, but at the same time, it brings the money and the talent. Would be something that's very easy to allocate very quickly, because foreign direct investment comes into stable environments, and very capital takes time to move. And if you're in a country like Egypt it takes time. It is relatively stable right now, but you don't still have a parliament. You had for many years, you didn't have a president, a couple of presidents all of a sudden. And there's a lot of things that are not yet there to be able to attract it at a very quick pace.
For me, if I may just add, of course, everybody, of course, said, gave really indications on real answers. To me, I go back to what are the challenges, right? There's some in regard to availability of capital. I think we all agree that skills and talent is very important. That's where the mentoring and the holding hand is very important. There's the implementation of the right corporate governance on these, for the startups and for, of course, the growth capital. To me, I think what we have to do is we have to look at what is needed. For example, again, I bring up what I mentioned earlier, the gap in funding for growth capital. Banks, we know, and we spoke about this. Banks, because they are investing or they're deploying depositors' money and shareholders' money, so their appetite for risk it's much lower, right? So I cannot expect from banks to really support this entrepreneurial projects and the growth capital. What we need vehicles like ourselves is to create funds that can be earmarked for pan-Arab investments to both support seeding entrepreneurs and also to go for growth capital. Of course, being here in this, of course, excellent place with excellent, of course, group, both the speakers and, of course, everybody else, it would be great if this forum creates or initiates some kind of an initiative to support, creating vehicles to support entrepreneurs and growth capital across the Arab countries. Thank you.
Moi, Louane, de la finance et de l'économie,
We're far removed from finance and economy. The theme of this forum is the renewal of the Arab world. I've heard a number of testimonials today, and to me, I think we should entitle this meeting "The Reality of the Arab World." You come from different origins, Syria, Palestine, Egypt, Lebanon, Bahrain. Each one of us has his or her dream, and we can make it real. Amy Malouf, our friend, tried to fight against this cleavage or this rift between the West and the East. He said, I hate the word root, because roots are in the soil, they are with worms in the dark. I rather go for the word origin. We have different origins. We are branches that aim for the light and target to horizon. So this is to the good health of the Arab world.
Ensuite, justement, vous parliez de cet avenir
referred to the future, which seems to be almost rosy. So how do you think that entrepreneurship might accelerate the transformation of Arab societies? If I may, I'd like to say, first of all, I'd like to thank Mr. Atras for this experience. All of us were engrossed by what he was saying. I mean, you mentioned number of models. There are many role models here in this platform. Levine, Patrick, and thank you for this experience. And you too are one. Maybe in the future, I'll try hard to become a role model. In entrepreneurship, you refer to governance. I think there's a lot of transparency. If you are an entrepreneur, you build up a team. There's very much a team spirit, an open mindset, and you're eager to learn. The basic tenet is that we know nothing, and we're going to work hard in order to learn a bit. So this is a mindset which I think is a key. As a number of entrepreneurs in the Arab world succeed, not just in the Arab world, but we'll see this more open mindset, the team spirit grow, where training and education will be the top priority, one's own life, private life, personal life, and professional life. Yeah, on the first impact is on jobs. You said that many young people, unemployed young people, and the risks and employment entails. And there is a source of energy among these people. So these entrepreneurs are going to create jobs, and this is bound to make an impact on the economic situation, the economy of these countries. And by creating jobs, more energy, positive energy, will be released in a constructive way, building up a new ecosystem and a modern society, a very different one. So it's very powerful. In Saudi Arabia, a few years ago, you've been authorized to employ Saudi women. Their mean age is 23. This has changed their life. Many of them had never worked. They used to live in a capsule, a family capsule. They were lacking in self-confidence. They wouldn't even express their views. So it's still very recent. But still, we can feel that this is a very powerful lever of change. And some of these women have become entrepreneurs. They spend some time with us, and they'll feel free to express their views.
I just want to say that entrepreneurship is forcing itself on the world. We are at a time where growth in the whole world is much less than it was when we started our jobs. Our jobs were, when we graduated, we were all looking to work for the big companies and telecoms as they were being established. I think right now the world is in debt. And at the same time, the problems that are created in the world are the opportunities for entrepreneurs. So today you have people that are graduating. I see this in Egypt. They want to work for startups. So the very well educated want to work for startups as opposed to working for big companies. And that in itself is really the change that we're seeing and what we have to foster. And countries like the US started way before us, or even our neighbor, Israel is a startup nation, as they say. So there's a lot that we can learn from the world and where we can bring home to really help our own nations and region. Thank you.
Je voulais juste rajouter quelque chose sur l'Arabie Saoudite.
On Saudi Arabia, Patrick mentioned Saudi Arabia. I think that wonderful things, great things are happening in Saudi Arabia right now with a very fast change that may be ignored from outside. I'm referring to the youth, which is well educated, holding key positions. They were educated abroad. The Saudi government gave more than 150,000 scholarships to the best US universities for young people who eventually come back to their country and hold key positions there. In the past, these positions were held by foreigners. Nowadays, they are very smart Saudi nationals, very involved in the life of the country. I said earlier, it's the leading country in terms of YouTube consumption, 50% downloads for education or in education. There's no such thing as a free education in my country. So YouTube is very useful. At least it works in Saudi Arabia. Right. So this is a very positive note to conclude this session. I'd like to thank you for the quality of your speeches. We're going to meet again on the second floor, I think.